Everyone, and thank you for joining me. It is a pleasure to be with you as we update on the progress we've made this spring session. Our government has been working hard for Albertans, passing 13 bills this session, fulfilling multiple platform commitments and delivering on the strong mandate received from Albertans just 1 year ago. Spring session kicked off at the end of February with the tabling of Budget 2024, which is a responsible plan for growing the province. Alberta 2024 is the third consecutive budget in the province that is balanced and is set the theme of the session by laying out the priorities of building safe communities, strengthening healthcare, and managing resources wisely while supporting our growing province, all the while bringing the Heritage Savings and Trust Fund to an all-time high of $22.1 billion. Alberta's government understands that safe communities are essential to the health and well-being of Alberta families, which is why we moved swiftly to introduce the Public Safety Statutes Amendment Act. This act enables 24/7 ankle bracelet monitoring for offenders and individuals on bail who pose a risk to public safety, and it protects Albertans by creating stronger measures to keep offenders away from their victims. It also enables the creation of an independent police agency to respond to the evolving public safety needs of communities in Alberta and help augment the frontline policing. We also took strong action to increase public safety through the Emergency Statutes Amendment Act. Emergency situations develop rapidly, and it is critical that all levels of government have all hands on deck and are able to collaborate to respond quickly and effectively. The Emergency Statutes Amendment Act ensures that in those situations, Alberta's government is best able to respond to keep Alberta families and communities safe. This session, Alberta's government put health and well-being of Albertans first, creating a healthcare system that serves Albertans' needs and pursuing a recovery-based model for mental health and addiction. The Health Statutes Amendment Act refocuses Alberta healthcare system by enabling the transition from one regional health authority to an integrated system of sector-based provincial health agencies. 4 new agencies will be created, one for each acute care, primary care, continuing care, and mental health and addictions. Ensuring Albertans have a system that works for them by prioritizing their need to find a primary care provider, to get urgent care without long waits, to have access to the best continuing care options, and expand access to mental health and addiction treatment. Additionally, through the Canadian Centre of Recovery Excellence Act, Alberta's government has reconfirmed our commitment to improving mental health and addiction services. The Canadian Centre for Recovery Excellence Act is a significant step towards building a robust recovery-based system for care for mental health and addictions in our province. This session, Alberta's government also passed the first Alberta Sovereignty Within a United Canada Act resolution, standing up for Albertans against the risk of brownouts, blackouts, and soaring electricity costs posed by the federal government's unconstitutional clean electricity regulations. Excuse me. I'm also incredibly proud of the progress made by Alberta's government this spring sitting and my colleagues, and I look forward to continuing to deliver for Albertans over the coming sessions. Thank you, and I'll now pass it over to my press secretary, Amber. I see a hand jumped right up out there. Here we go.
So that brings us to the end of the formal portion of our news conference. We'll move on to the media question and answer portion. We have time for one question and one follow-up, and I'd ask media to identify yourself and your outlet before asking your question. We'll start in the room and then we'll go on the line. So in the room, yeah, go for it.
Janet French from the CDC. So you did outline the promises that your government had made that you followed through on, but there are also several unexpected things that came out of this session, including making it easier to overturn municipal bylaws, potentially vetting university research funding based on perceived ideology, opening the door for this provincial police service, and making it easier to take over local emergencies. How can you say that Albertans gave you a mandate to do these things and you didn't campaign on them?
I think all the legislation that you just outlined indicate that Alberta is drawing the strong lines that we have within the Constitution and our authority to make sure we're actually meeting the needs of Albertans. So, for example, with emergency measures, making sure that when we're going in, there's an emergency there, whether it be wildfire or something else, we're able to act quickly and respond to the needs of the local constituents there. This isn't a situation where the government's trying to take over, rather be part of the solution, but also recognizing we need to act quickly in some of those emergency situations. With regards to the Provincial Priorities Act, Bill 18, I think it's also important that we draw strong lines between us and the federal government. One of our main priorities as a government is to create and to build affordable housing, and recognizing that there may be things standing in our way with the federal government that oppose or prohibit us from doing that, and so we have to make sure that we're strengthening our position as a provincial government.
Just to follow up, I chatted with some political scientists about how the sitting went, and they were just really taken aback by the number of steps your government took to centralize power in Executive Council. And I'm wondering, why do you want this level of control over school boards, municipalities, universities, post-secondaries?
Well, political scientists are entitled to their opinion, and if they have an interest in seeing how government works from the inside, they're welcome to run for office. But what I would say is, as a province, I think it's very important for us to make sure that we are taking care of our province and Albertans. That's the mandate that we were given to us a year ago. And we're going to continue to fulfill that. So centralizing control is not a term that I would use. What I would say is making sure we're collaborating, but also drawing clear lines of provincial, federal, and municipal authority.
Jonathan Bradley, Western Standard. So you spoke about a major priority for this session being public safety and emergency management. How do you want to see that? How do you want to see public safety and emergency management built on in future sessions?
Well, I think we've set a strong foundation here. It's really about making sure Albertans feel safe in their homes and where it matters most on the streets. I think that there's a concern about that, and has been, and voiced to our government, and we're responding. So with, for example, with the ankle bracelets, making sure that people cannot be re-victimized, and that we're keeping people who might cause harm to others off the streets, or if they're back on the streets, making sure we know where they are.
Okay, you spoke about this session and you considered it a success, and you highlighted some of the achievements. How do you want this session to be remembered by future governments?
By future governments? That the government of the day was looking after the best interests of Albertans.
Hi, Sean Amato with City News. Bill 20, there's a bit in there about electronic voting tabulators and banning them. Today, David Parker of Take Back Alberta indicated that that was a promise made to him by the Premier. Can you confirm that?
I'm not going to comment on any conversations the Premier had with him.
So he's suggesting that he has a hand in setting the legislative agenda of this government. Does he?
Again, I'm not going to comment on what David Parker's saying. As the House Leader, I work very closely with the Premier, with ministers in Cabinet, and with caucus as we introduce and move legislation through the Chamber. David Parker's not in the Chamber. I don't work for David Parker. I work with David Parker. I work for all Albertans. So
Do you talk to him? Do you take direction from him? You?
No. I talk to all Albertans. If Albertans have an interest in reaching out to me, they're always welcome to. So no one gets preferential treatment from me. I make sure that all Albertans are heard. That's my job, both as an MLA for Cardston-Siksika, as the Minister of Tourism and Sport, as a government House Leader. So yeah.
Shailen Skolsky with CTV News Edmonton. Speaking of hearing from all Albertans, I went out and asked them what they think the #1 focus of your provincial government should be, and they said affordability. They said they didn't see enough of it during the spring sitting. What do you make of that criticism, and where can you point to it in the spring sitting?
Well, I think affordability is always top of mind, and I hear it everywhere I go in the province, whether it's from the tourism operators, whether it's from the sporting organizations, or the good people of Cardston-Siksika. And I think as a province, we do a very good job already as a baseline with the lowest tax jurisdiction in the country. We have no PST. We removed the fuel tax for just about 2 years, and depending upon the rolling average, that could come off again in the next quarter. So we're always thinking about affordability measures, but there's always potential options to do more, and we're always listening.
If it's such an important issue and it's one that's top of mind, then why wasn't it more prevalent in the legislation that was introduced in the last 14 weeks?
I think, the legislation we introduced over the last 14 weeks was what we felt was need to go through this time. But again, affordability is always on top of mind. We are continuing to look after that, and there could be legislation in the future, but we'll deal with that as it comes.
Catherine Krowski, Alberta Today. So there's some committees scheduled over the summer, but the Legislative Assembly says that the fall sitting will be the second session. So I'm just, on the timing of prorogation, are you going to do that right before, and can we expect that throne speech following?
You know, I have to say that lots of questions of prorogation haven't talked about it. I'm not quite sure where that's coming from. I guess you've added a little more light to that, but there's been no conversations about prorogation at this time. And should that come up, you know, I suspect you'll hear about it later, but we haven't been having that conversation at all.
Okay. And there were at least 3 bills passed with amendments, and then there's a bill that you were going to bring forward that is an amendment to the bill. And you had so many stakeholders give their opinion after the fact. Why not slow down? Why not do the consultation first rather than introduce the bill and ask questions later? It seems like haste is making waste here.
That was a good line. I don't agree with it. At least in this instance. But what I would say is, you know, we sat for 10 weeks of session, countless hours, and there was plenty of time to debate all the legislation. I trust and believe the consultation was done on all the legislation. It goes through a rigorous process through caucus and cabinet, in cabinet committees before it's introduced. So that process gives me the peace of mind that we have done consultation. As a minister myself, I understand the consultative process, and I understand there's also sometimes there are people who feel they weren't consulted enough. It happens, but our job is to continue to hear from them. I myself have done lots of consultations, both in the tourism and sport file, but also on legislation that we have gone through this session. And I feel like, you know, the bills that have gone through are good bills, and I'm excited about the session as a whole, as we have finished just yesterday. I feel like I missed something else you asked in a question, but.
Go ahead.
Are there any more questions in the room?
I do have one.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to ask you to put on your sport minister hat.
Oh yes, I love that hat.
Yes. So hearing some chatter about funding for Edmonton's sporting facilities, perhaps Commonwealth, more infrastructure around Rogers Place. And I'm wondering, what impact do those type of facilities have on sporting in a facility, and what kind of conversations are you having there?
When you're talking about the larger facilities, that probably speaks more to the tourism side, because we don't oversee, or, you know, professional sports organizations aren't our jurisdiction. But when you're hosting something significant like last night's game, which, by the way, was a fantastic ending, and if you disagree, you're probably in the wrong room. But you know, those kinds of events, they draw massive crowds from within the province and around Canada, even around, you know, around the world. You look in the arena, I think I saw some people last night speaking different languages who are clearly not from Edmonton, who are excited to be at the game. And so the point of me saying that is, comes to sport infrastructure on the larger scale, like Rogers or Commonwealth, they're able to host significant events that fill hotel rooms, fill restaurants. People come here, they stay longer, they spend more. At the more amateur level, we do have our Active Communities Initiative. That grant is up to $1.5 million. It's a matching grant, but that allows us to either build or refurbish existing sports infrastructure to help us get more people across the whole province recreating, right? So it's not just about youth, not just about one specific age group, it's about everyone, because I believe strongly, as someone who went through the athletic system from a young age and all the way to professional sports, it's done a lot for me. I know it can do a lot for others. Healthy kids learn healthy habits, who become healthy teens and healthy adults. And I think that's really important for us, and they need infrastructure to do that.
Yeah, so Minister, this particular session also had an unprecedented number of time allocation motions. I know that you said a couple of minutes ago about giving the opposition time to speak to things, but the opposition was pushing back quite hard against the fact that debate was quite limited in their mind at various stages of debate, especially the last 4 bills. So I'm wondering, now that you've got everything passed, I mean, people are calling it anti-democratic, and I wonder if you could respond to that.
You know, I would disagree. We have 13 bills that were passed this session. We sat for 10 weeks. There was a significant amount of time for us to debate a number of those, to debate all those bills. I know the opposition we talk with the opposition about these bills whenever possible. And I would say that in the last week alone, we spent 4 hours just on division bills. We were looking to give opportunities for more time for debate. That 4 hours definitely could have gone to debate. We also we began city nights to give more opportunities to debate. So I do appreciate the sentiment that others have said, but I would disagree. I think that the bills got through in what was a reasonable amount of time.
4 hours on division bills, but we had four bills. So basically what you're saying is another hour of debate on each bill.
Well, each bill gets the amount of time as that they get. I mean, if I look at my numbers, some bills got 6 hours, some got less, and I'm going through all the bills, all 13 bills.
Do you think 6 hours is enough to debate a bill? Especially some of these bills, the scope of them are quite large. So if you look at Bill 20, you've got the stuff on, you've got the stuff that people have complained about regarding municipalities, but there's a lot of stuff in there about affordable housing as well. So 6 hours, for example, really enough to debate a bill that big?
I'm referring to bills that passed without time allocation. Some of them had 6 hours and less of debate.
You must have a record about how long did it take how much debate was there on Bill 20 then?
I've got to go back and look. I'll get back to you on that,
You don't have
Michelle.
that there?
I don't have it right here on the phone, but I'll have to get back to you on that. Happy to.
We're going to now move to questions on the line. Operator, can you please put through the first reporter?
Graham Thompson, The Star. Thank you. Minister, going back to the question, Catherine, about proroguing Parliament and then having a speech from the throne, why have a new session start in the fall? Like normally, there's a speech from the throne every year. Last one was last October, so why not have one this October?
Preference.
I'm sorry, what do you mean?
It's a preference. We speak with the Premier and the Premier's office and determine if we want to prorogue or not. There's no specific criteria for it, and if we determine we want to prorogue, then we'll do that. But at the moment, there's been no conversations about it. But actually, going back to your question, Michelle, I do have some numbers. So Bill 10 was debated 6 hours. Bill 11 was debated 6 hours. Bill 18 was debated 7 hours. Those are some numbers I have off the top of my head here. So.
Okay. Are there any other
Okay.
folks?
Well, hold on. I didn't get a follow. I'm sorry. Can I get a follow-up?
Yep, go for your follow-up.
Have at it.
Yeah, sorry. So looking ahead to the fall, is there anything in mind right now? I'm jumping ahead of things, but anything we've heard from the Premier that she wants to bring in something, maybe legislation this fall dealing with the gender, a pronoun issue, things like that. Can you tell us what you might be looking at this fall on things like that?
No, not really. It's a bit premature to talk about specific legislation. But to your question about the bills, or rather the policy the Premier talked about, we're spending the summer consulting on the implementation of these policies, and that's going to take up a lot of my summer as well as my colleagues. But in terms of specific legislation, it'd be too early to talk about that.
Well, thank you. That is all the time we have for today. If you have any further questions, you can find me. My contact information is at the bottom of the news release that went out in conjunction with this.
Thank you all. Hope you have a wonderful, safe summer. I'm sure we'll see you on the circuit.